Hello, and welcome to Ask an Archaeologist. I'm Paul Duncan McGarrity. Hello, and welcome to a special episode of Ask an Archaeologist podcast with me, Paul Duncan McGarrity. And I guess if you've seen the title, you know exactly what this is about, but if somehow you have managed to get beyond that and are just listening from a roll-on, this is a special episode of the podcast, a lot shorter. And it's very different because, well, a couple of days ago, I was having to think about how absolutely bizarre it must be for archaeology students who are just starting in at university at the moment, whether they are having to go into classrooms with all of the precautions that are being taken whilst we experience the global pandemic of 2020, or if you are working remotely and are not getting the starting experience of sitting down with a group of other people to learn about a very interesting subject, whatever it may be, whatever the circumstances are, it has to be a little bit of an unusual time. So I thought it might be nice to see if there was anyone out there who was already further down the path in the career of archaeology and the heritage industry generally, who had any advice to give students that they wish they'd received when they first started. Because things are already going to be tricky enough, we might as well try and give people a leg up at the start. And I put the question out to Twitter, and lots of people got back to me with some really interesting advice. And I thought the easiest way of doing things, rather than let that all just exist as one single thread on the internet for one day, I would put this together, collate some of the best ideas, talk through a few other things of my own, and just let this stand on its own 2 feet as something that hopefully people can enjoy, listen to, find solace in, and get a few hints and tips as well to help them on their journey. Of course, all of the advice I'm about to impart from all of these people comes with a very large asterisk, a large caveat, if you will, which is that the advice and the information that they have gleaned, they did so not under the shadow of a global pandemic and lockdowns and the unknown that we are currently living in. So in some instances, whilst there's nice advice here and possibly something that could be useful to you later on in your university career, when things have settled back a little bit, it may be a little trickier right now, but worth keeping in mind. So let's get on with a few of the hints and tips. Here's a really good one, and one that's worth mentioning right at the top. A few people put it in, but this one's from Tom Fitton. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And if you're not sure about asking the person in front of you, start by asking someone else and building yourself up to it. Asking questions is a very important part of what you're going to be doing. The problem I found is, or occasionally, the people who will be teaching you, professors and lecturers of various odds and sods, will be very, very knowledgeable in their subject. Some of them will be very good at being able to teach. Others will have got into academia because they want to research their own things and they have to lecture because that's part of the job. And in lots of instances, particularly as this is can be viewed as a niche career, and people who are teaching things tend to have a niche within the niche. As with all things of that kind, people can forget what it was like at the start before they knew all of the words for all of the things. So if there is any technical jargon, if people are referring to sites that they might think that you should know about, no one should know anything. The point of being at university is to learn this stuff And if you don't know it when you go in, fine. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. No one should make you feel bad about not knowing something. We're not here to hold the information and scoff at those that aren't as high up the rung as we are. If someone does treat you like that, find someone else to ask. There are enough people out there who are not just happy but want to share the information. But if you don't ask questions, if you don't put yourself forward and quite simply say, I don't understand that, nobody will know that you need the extra help. No one will know that you need any guidance or anything like that. It's very easy to get inside yourself on these things and to think, oh God, that is something that I should have probably already known. But as I said, no one should know anything. Where you're at university to learn, and it's fine to ask questions. So next one, once you've finished at your degree, there's lots of opportunities to go into lots of different roles within archaeology and within the heritage industry. You don't necessarily have to be someone who excavates. That is something that is covered by Andrew Ward, Ward _ Andrew Ark, who said, remember, not everything has to be about digging. There are many archaeological jobs, not just being on site. If you do want to dig, get involved in whatever way you can as early as you can so you can build up a variety of experiences. It's a very good idea. A lot of people, when they come out of university, tend to have very limited experience excavating. If you're in the UK, a lot of the archaeological work is contract archaeology, commercial archaeology, working for a unit that tenders for jobs, usually associated with the construction industry, and you go out and you work on site, and you get thrown in at the deep end. You're expected to have a certain level of ability to record features, and I know when I first started I didn't reach that level. It took me a while to get up to what was needed from me, and I was lucky to have some very patient supervisors around me whilst I did so. I could have hugely helped myself by going out and getting more experience in that commercial sector, volunteering. I know it's not available to everyone, but if it is something that you can do, absolutely go for it. If not, and you are just limited to the excavations that you're going on with your university, pay attention. Again, it's that question of, it's again asking questions. If you don't understand something, ask to be shown, ask to do different jobs around if that opportunity is available. If your university has a field techniques course, or there's an opportunity to take more courses that focus on field techniques, do it. It's a huge part of what you might end up doing. And you can only make yourself look better in the eyes of a potential employer if you have taken hold of any opportunity that's been put in front of you. That said, this one might be a very, very important follow-on for anyone who does decide to go into excavation and working as a field archaeologist. And this is from Tordal Back. Don't overstretch yourself physically. Knees, lower back, hernias. I don't know many field archaeologists who haven't left themselves with long-term problems. It's tempting to be heroic shifter of prodigious volumes of soil and stone, but you've a long road ahead. Take care. That's very, very, very sage advice. I will add to it my own thing. Buy strap-on knee pads. The thicker the foam, the better, and use them. There's a term in professional wrestling called a bump card, which is this idea that your body can only take so much punishment being thrown around in a ring Every time you hit the ground, they refer to it as a bump, and your bump card, you check off each of the big ones until eventually your body can't take it anymore. I think that's a pretty decent term that could be applied to archaeologists as well. But with me, it's how many winters of digging through gravel by hand can you hold up to? I managed 8, and then I was like, I'm going to go and retrain to do an inside job, please, because my knees sound like a bag of castanets falling down a ladder at the moment. So, look after your knees, lift from the knees, look after your back. As best you can, because this isn't always available to you, try not to twist when you're excavating features. The problem is that you have to dig to the shape and the size of the feature sometimes, and you can get yourself into awkward situations. I would say that it's worth taking a step back, having a look at whether you can improve your position rather than just going in there and dig. And if you can, do. If you can't, look to see if you can share the task with somebody else, if that's a possibility. Don't be heroic. Don't bring it all on yourself. Similarly, this is a bizarre bit of bravado that I've seen from some people. The idea that you should dig in all weather, I personally disagree with. There are some who I've seen out there in t-shirts, in torrential downpours, being like, no, this is what an archaeologist should be. No, an archaeologist should be someone who can record what material culture is. It's not a topless Ray Mears screaming at the weather saying, is this all you've got, God? So, yeah. There's no need for theatrics, there's no need for heroics. Look after your body. And from that exact same viewpoint, here's a very, very important one. Although, as Hoopla Focal did actually point out, this makes it sound a little bit like the Baz Luhrmann song. You should wear sunscreen. Use sunscreen. Simple as. People forget about that. There's something called the archaeology sunburn, which is your forearms but not your hands because you're wearing gloves, the back of your neck because you forget about that bit, and the strip just above your bum hole because you're bending over the whole time. And it's funny at first, but long term, it doesn't do your skin any good. It doesn't do you any good. It puts you at risk. Don't do it. Don't be a hero. Don't be silly. Wear the right clothes for the weather. Look after yourself. You want this to be a long career. Talking of Hoopla Focal, here's another good bit of advice if you do go out onto excavations. Always stick your trowel upright in the ground before walking away from it. The absolute amount of trowels that get lost on every dig. It's fair. I've lost... I think 4 or 5 in my career, and it hurts every single time one goes missing. I would also say it's worth putting a bit of coloured paint on the handle or something that can actually identify it as yours. Because if everyone has the WHS, drop forged archaeology special, then there's nothing special about them. Everyone has the same thing, so dab of paint, put your name on it, anything to make it sort of uniquely yours, and it won't go into a finds bucket and get lost. Dr. Joe Ball has this to say: keep reading and researching, including outside your direct specialist area. The more context you have, the better. Keep good notes and archive as much material as possible. When digging and not wearing them, put your sun/glasses in the finds tray. It's good. It's a really good idea. It's what I was talking about earlier about sometimes archaeologists who are quite far down the path in their career can get sort of narrow vision, and you end up just looking at one small aspect of a much bigger picture, and you forget about the fact that all of this archaeological material and all of the things that we're studying are not created in a vacuum. They have wider contexts, and the only way that you can keep yourself appraised of that is to check out other disciplines, to work with more than just those in your immediate circle. On top of that, it's always, because I work in community archaeology, something that's always worth considering is speaking to as diverse a group of people to try and help with the interpretation of a site as possible. More diverse backgrounds, more diverse voices, people with different experiences can have an insight into something that you may not have. You can have a blind spot just because of your own learned experience, your own lived experiences don't necessarily match up with other people's. I think this is a worthwhile moment for one of my own pontifications. Something worth considering, at least. You don't have to agree with me, but this was read in the. I read this in the book Homeless Heritage, and it struck a chord, and that is that all archaeology, all archaeological work that you do, is inherently political. The reason for that is you will be discussing people's lives, potentially motivations, and those lives were not lived, as I say, in a vacuum. They were lived within societal structures, within economic pressures on individuals and on societies. There may be religious elements that have gone into the creation or the arrangement of a site. These all affect people's lives. So anytime you make a pronouncement, an interpretation on a site, you are inherently making choices about what certain evidence suggests. And as such, I think, be prepared for an argument, by which I mean critical thinking is one of the big skills you're about to learn as you go into archaeology, or at least if you not necessarily learn, hone as you go through archaeology. So be open-minded to other people's points of view. Take in what they have to say, synthesize it, and make sure that you do not take at face value anything from a single evidence point of view. You want to try and have as much backup to any interpretive element of your research as possible. Don't get caught out seeing one thing that agrees with your worldview and sticking to it rigidly. I've said this many times before, but it's something that I think is key. Archaeology at its best should be like a police investigation. You are using all of the evidence available to you, which includes, in the analogy, witness statements, but in reality, the interpretations and points of view from as diverse a group of people as possible. And you use all of that evidence and statements and context to create a best fit narrative of what may have happened. You are very unlikely to be saying exactly, this is what happened for certain. And always be ready to have new evidence brought in to the case file that may change what your interpretation of a site is. You're not wrong. The people who are bringing new evidence aren't trying to break down what you've created. They are adding to it. Be open-minded. Look at it. If the evidence is well created, well supported from trusted sources, then you will have to reevaluate the best fit narrative to consider that evidence as well. And that is how we continue to grow as a field, the understanding and the knowledge of past societies in a way that is useful, collaborative, and sensible, frankly. So back to the other advice that isn't a long talk. Anna, and I apologise if I mispronounce your last name, Anna Chasui Don't expect to go straight into project officer roles after graduating. You'll probably be starting at the bottom in a commercial unit, and you need to be aware of how much archaeologists actually get paid. Very good advice. Worth having in the back of your head. It's an industry that I personally think needs better remuneration for those who take part in it. But as we currently stand, the pay for an archaeologist graduating isn't brilliant, but it's a job that has other benefits. If it's a lifestyle that you enjoy, if it's a workplace where you don't necessarily know what you're going to do every day, even if you like working outside as opposed to an office, there are other benefits that aren't just financial, which is good because the financials aren't super great. But be aware of that when you're going in, that it's not necessarily the job that will set you up for life financially, but it can set you up for life. Well, it's a job that can make you happy. So, well, I'll leave it at that. But patience and humility is a huge plus whenever you start these things. You know, the first thing I definitely realised was that I don't know as much as I think I do, which was good to get into my head very quickly. Lisa Randisi, keep in touch with the people you meet and nurture those connections. It's a collaborative game. You know, you can do it all on your own, but it's a lonely life. It's good advice. Like, that's really good advice from a professional point of view, but also that's a really good advice from just a social point of view. Yeah, be friendly. Join groups. Which leads me perfectly on to Steve White, former guest of this podcast, whose first line quite simply says, join a union. I thoroughly agree. Do it. Do it on day one. Join a union. You must join a union. Collective action is the only way that we will improve the industry for the people who actually do the excavating work. Join a union, join a union, join a union. And at this point, I'd like to take 5 minutes out to sing the entire of the International and the Red Flag. But I can't because that would be madness. Steve also has some very good practical advice as well. Develop your physical fitness if you can. Digging won't make you fit. I disagree with that. It does make you fit, but only on one side. You will end up with one big arm, one little arm. Steve goes on. Digging won't make you fit and puts lots of stress on the joints, etc. Do cardio and weights and build up strength. Ask questions. Everyone has to start somewhere. Don't be afraid. Just to reiterate that point. So it's a very key one. Neil Jackman adds to the same sort of idea of working in groups, having those connections, when he said that all good archaeological projects these days are done through collaboration and partnership. Avoid those who are entirely ego-driven and douchey, no matter how expert on a particular aspect of archaeology. Again, cracking advice for archaeologists, pretty good advice for life generally as well. And this one is one that I think took me by surprise, but yeah, absolutely, do this. This is Casey Martin Stone. Familiarise yourself thoroughly with all applicable legislation. If you're going to be working out there and there is a legal framework for how archaeology is done, it's probably a good idea to find out if you are doing anything that is illegal. Absolutely, 100% go and learn the laws that cover the industry you want to work in. And I'll finish with this last one. ArchaeoCat has this to say. Don't be afraid to give something a go. We all had to do something for the first time. Also, go to as many conferences as you can to see what really gets you excited. It might help you decide on where, if, to specialise. I did not go to enough conferences. It's something that I lament. I wish I'd seen the breadth of roles that were available in archaeology. Maybe I'd have taken a different path earlier on. I don't know. All my mistakes are my own. All of my successes are my own. And I'd like to thank everybody who put in a little bit of advice so that other people can make their own mistakes and have their own successes. Whatever you choose to do, however you progress within the heritage industry, or maybe you finish your degree and you decide it's not for you, I think it's still a pretty good basis for life. The critical thinking, the way of looking at the world, all of those sort of things. You're in for an interesting couple of years. I'm sorry that you're having to do it under weird circumstances, but I have no doubt that you're going to do fine. It's a mad, mad world out there, and I'll be honest, I think we're going to need people who can critically look at the world, at the people living in it, and at the systems that govern it. And that's you. So, the best of luck. I look forward to meeting some of you in the future on sites or working in the offices or just keeping your hand in out of interest after you've gone off to the city to become bankers. I hope this helped. Keep safe. Wash your hands. Join a union. Keep the contacts. And whatever you do, remember, wear sunscreen. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Ask an Archaeologist podcast with me, Paul Duncan McGarity. The music you were listening to was by From the Ashes. Check them out on Bandcamp. It was produced by me, Paul Duncan McGarity. You can follow me on Twitter at AskAnArch, or you can send an email at askanarch@gmail.com. But most importantly, if you've enjoyed yourself and you think you have a friend who might be interested in the podcast, please tell them about it. Write a review, put up a star rating, let people know that we're here. It's incredibly helpful and much appreciated. Once again, thank you to everyone who has asked an arc. Bye-bye.